The blacksmith, he can see the whole picture. He can see the beginning before he even starts to the end. And that's what we're going to talk about today. In Jeremiah 29:11, as most of you, I'm sure you read, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." I don't know about the rest of you, but sometimes I have a hard time believing in this. Does God really care? Why should He? Why should He care about someone that's done so many bad things to Him? What do you see in this picture? As you look at it, I know for me, I see unworthiness. There's days when I come through these doors and I still feel that way at times. I feel like because of what I've done that I shouldn't be teaching. That maybe people won't hear me. That if they knew my story that they would judge, or that my ability to be heard wouldn't be heard as well. But Paul did too. And if you go to 1 Corinthians 15:9, Paul says it. He says, "For I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church." I can totally relate to what Paul's saying. You know, I grew up in the church, but when I became an adult, I did everything possible to live a worldly life. And I had an emptiness and a brokenness about me that I tried to fill with everything in the world. From house to car, to wife, to job, to accolades, to an addiction. That was exactly what Satan used to keep me from serving. He constantly reminded me of it. He would constantly tell me, "Dude, look at what you've done. People aren't going to be able to hear you. People aren't going to listen, especially if you tell them your story. Are you kidding me? There's so many people that are in the church that maybe haven't done what you've done, haven't seen what you've seen, haven't been a part of what you've been a part of." But Paul answers it in verse 10. "But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And His grace for me was not without effect." In other words, through my unworthiness, I can better see God's grace. Because of the things that make me feel unworthy, I can feel God's grace stronger and more prevalent in my life. A couple weeks ago, I heard an illustration that I absolutely loved at church. And it said, "Don't always go to the Christian that is running towards Christ for advice. Go to the Christian that walks with a limp, for they have a better understanding of God's grace." My unworthiness, the things that I've done in my life, gave me a limp. But because of that limp, I can understand better what people go through in their life. I can better understand the grace and the forgiveness God gave me. Because I went down such a dark road, I can understand when someone comes to me and says, "Dude, I'm in a bad place. I've done this thing." I can sit with them. I can stand with them. I can hold their hand. I can look them in the eye, and I can say, "I understand where you're at. I've been there too. Let me tell you about how to get healed. What else do you see? For me, I see broken pieces of metal. Something bare and exposed. But so did God with Isaiah. In Isaiah 6:5, Isaiah is having a vision of God in God's temple, and he's absolutely terrified. He goes, "For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. I'm a sinful man, and I live in a world of sinful people. And yet my eyes have seen the King." And God saw that. He saw that Isaiah laid everything bare. He laid everything at his feet. He said, "God, I'm broken and I'm sinful." Just like that piece of metal that the blacksmith breaks away. He lays it bare. He makes it exposed. I remember when I was there. I remember the night in the basement of my house when I was laid bare and I was exposed. The culmination of my sin. And my heart was exposed to God. And I asked God to give me a reason to keep living that night. You give me a good reason. And he answered me as he did Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 29:11. And I'm going to read it again. Because this is what God told me that night. He says, "My son, I know the plans I have for you. And maybe you can't, because I'm the blacksmith. But they're plans to prosper you and not to harm you. So don't you do it. Plans to give you hope because you don't have any right now. Plans for a future. Maybe one you can't see. You can't see the future that that blacksmith has for that piece of metal. Maybe it's a sword. Maybe it's a spear. Maybe it's a cane for someone to walk around with to help them throughout their life." At that moment in the basement, at that moment in the temple, he exposed me to his love for me. I saw the coal he flew down to cleanse me of my sins, just as the seraphim flew down for Isaiah. I saw the love he had for me when he sent his one and only Son for me to die on the cross. That was my cleansing. That was my coal. At that moment, he exposed me to the power to overcome all that I had done. His power to heal all that was broken within me. The same power that he showed when he got up and he walked out of the tomb. At that moment, he exposed me to his plan he had for me, just as he did in Mark 16:15. When Jesus is talking to his apostles, Jesus said the same thing that night to me. He said, "I know the plans I have for you, and this is what they are. For you to stop ignoring what I have called you for so many years." And as he said in Mark to his apostles, he said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." John, don't worry about what people are going to think or what people are going to say. Don't worry as Jeremiah did about being too young. He said, "Go and you say what I have for you to say." You have a story. You have pieces of metal that have been broken away through the choices in your life. But I'm going to use those choices that you have made to comfort people and to bring people to you. To bring people to me. That's what I see. Maybe you see other things, and that's okay. As long as you understand that that is what you see. So what? What does he see? He sees potential. He looks at a piece of metal at the very beginning, and he sees potential. He sees your potential. He saw my potential long before I ever saw anything. Before I was even in this world, when I was still in my mother's womb, he says he saw my potential. And if you don't believe me, let me give you some examples. Abraham was a liar. Isaac was a liar. Jacob was a thief. Moses was a killer. Rahab was a prostitute. And Rahab was the great-great-grandmother to King David, which is the ancestor to the king himself. He saw the potential in a prostitute. You wonder why Jesus had a soft spot in his heart for prostitutes. Maybe it's because his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was one. And God saw the potential in her. And so when the woman came to his feet and said, "Lord, show me mercy," he had already done so because he saw the potential. For all these people, God could see what they'd done and said, "I can work with that." What else do I see? What else does he see? He sees something worth investing in, I think. Because he has. He did then by sending his son, his one and only son, for you, for me, for us. And I want you to think about this for a second as we go into the Christmas season. Last year I sat in church with my baby boy. And as I thought of Jesus coming into this world, I kind of understood God a little bit better, because we like to think of all this joy that came into the world that night. The good tidings in the gospel. And, the Greek word for good tidings is translated the gospel. So when the angel comes to the shepherds and he says, "I bring you good news of great tidings," he's saying, "I'm bringing you good news of the gospel. It's here. The word is here." But what was God thinking that night? As a father, thinking of the son that came into the world, I thought of, and I looked at my boy, and I remember holding him for the first time. And where the emotion comes from is because I thought as a father, if I knew my son is finally here, but I know what's in store for you. What's in store for you is you will be tied to a post and beaten. What's in store for you, my son, is you will be dragged through the streets and nailed to a cross. For a people that say they love me and yet do this to my one and only son. That is how much he has invested in you. That is how much he has invested in me. And he has invested in us now by what he does in your life. Every day. And sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes you can't see it until you're 30 years old and you look back on the last decade and all the pain and all the strife and all the troubles you've gone through, and you go, "Oh, that entire time you were investing in me." Through the surgeries, through the screams, through the bereavements, through the fights with your marriage, through everything, you were right there. You were investing in me. You were pounding away. And at times it hurt. At times it will hurt. But Jesus says You know what? If you live a life for me, it's not going to be easy. If you live a life for me, expect persecution. Expect troubles. Because you're living it for me. And when I was here, no one liked what I had to say either. But it's what had to be said. Invest in people. Love your God as much as you can and love people. Invest in Him as much as He invests in you. So when you look at this picture, what's He see? He doesn't just see you, He sees His people. He's investing in His kingdom, and you are His kingdom. We are His kingdom. I am His kingdom. Who cherishes the finished product more? The child or the blacksmith? Who knows its abilities and its limitations best? Who knows your limitations best? Who knows best how to wield that finished product? Who's more invested in its upkeep and its care? The child or the blacksmith? The blacksmith is. Now trust what you can't see. Like the centurion did in Matthew 8:8. Lord, I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. There again you see the centurion with unworthiness. But he understands it. He goes, I don't rate to have you under my roof. You're the king. But just say the word and my servant will be healed. He didn't have to see Jesus work the miracle for him to believe. For him to have faith. And become of his unseen faith, Jesus replied, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such a great faith. You have to have faith that God has a plan for your life. A plan that maybe you can't see right now. And if you can't see it, then give it to Him. Jeremiah 29. And people sometimes, I think, don't read this portion of the verse, which is 12 through 14. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. He is just waiting for us to bring it and put it at His feet and say, God, I am unworthy as a centurion. But as the centurion said, I tell my soldiers, go, and you go, and they go. I tell them, come, and they come. I tell my servants to go get something, and they go get it. You are the king. All you have to do is tell me to go, and I will go. And that's what I'm going to do now. Just as He told us in Matthew 28:19, go and make disciples amongst all nations, baptizing them and teaching them. Further on in Jeremiah 29:13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. If you're going to seek Him, don't half it. Don't give Him a percentage. Give Him 100%, just as John and James did. They gave 100% to give 100%. You got to give Him 100% of everything you've got. Because every day of your life, He is giving you 100%. Don't give Him anything less. Because He's given you everything He's got. He gave you everything He's got. I love the last part of it. He says, if you seek me with all your heart, I will be found by you, and I will bring you back from captivity. What we see is captivity. What he sees is freedom. And that's what he promises. How do you choose to see the image now? Let's pray. God, I just come before you today and